Now we continue our focus now on the crisis in Syria, putting the entire region on edge. Serious new questions now about the impact America's response to the alleged chemical attack will have across the Middle East. Let's bring in Lisa Daftari, Fox News contributor and Middle East journalist. Lisa, good of you to join us this afternoon. This is a very difficult time right now for so many people throughout the Middle East. What are you hearing about what's going on the ground in Syria? I mean, we're hearing about renewed attacks against rebel forces, and innocent people are caught in the crossfire of all of this.
Right, and this is nothing new. This has been going on for 29 months. So the same people who were victim to these attacks are still finding themselves in the crossfire. And even more so, there's a risk to the people and the civilians, where we know that the Assad regime has been listening to President Obama's thinking out loud about these attacks and moving the assets into civilian areas. And we have to ask ourselves, the same dictator who used chemical weapons against his people now not use these same people as human shields against U.S.-led attacks. So obviously the anger against the violence against the people, against the Christians, against all these minorities is continuing. But again, the humanitarian problem is not a new one. It's been going on for much longer. And you know, with the red line is about chemical weapons, and President Obama's rhetoric has been that this changes the equation. We have to remember the reason why the Obama administration has hesitated to go in thus far. Those realities have not changed on the ground, and we're still fearful that the weapons will get into the wrong hands, that the chemical weapons will be moved or fall into the hands of either Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah forces, and those realities and those risks still exist.
And Lisa, for the risk that you've just mentioned, there are many generals here, retired generals, who are basically saying this military intervention that the president wants to pursue, conducting some sort of strike, may amount to nothing more than a pinprick in stopping Assad. They're calling for more extreme measures, like a decapitation of the Syrian regime. Is that the only answer, or do we have a peaceful solution, as the Pope is trying to get people to get back to the table and actually discuss a peaceable way of putting this together?
Right, and what the president has put forward is not a solution, not short-term and definitely not long-term, to solving the Syrian crisis. Regardless of whether these strikes happen or not, we have to think about what's going to happen in the hours, days, months, and years to come. And the humanitarian crisis, the killing, the use of chemical weapons, what guarantee do we have that this will not continue the days after the attacks? And in terms of looking at a comprehensive approach, the president's saying this is not about regime change. Well, if it's not about regime change, we're going to keep Assad in power, then again, we're back to the same cycle of violence against the people of Syria. So what I would suggest that many is, are talking about...
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the question is, if it isn't a regime change, or if it were, the president wisely would be thinking, well, who do you turn this regime over to?
Right, then that's exactly the issue that we've had in so many of these countries, and we don't want to add Syria to the list of Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, where we've seen where there's no viable alternative. You cannot just remove the leader, and that's exactly what the calculus is in this equation as well. We're going in, even if we're not after regime change, the Assad regime will be weakened, because that's the goal. Well, why wouldn't Al-Qaeda or these other radical forces use the opportunity to swoop right in? We pulled the rug under from Mubarak in Egypt. Of course, the Islamists were the ones that were well organized and well funded. Those are the ones who swoop in. So the approach should be for the U.S. to look for a comprehensive, long-lasting, long-term approach, to find the opposition, to find the seculars, find the moderates, approach the Christians, approach the Kurds, the people who have and want a real voice in building a future for Syria.
Lisa Daftari, we thank you for your insights on this and your perspective. Thank you.